Frederic, welcome to Le Bon Vie Champagne TV.
Merci.
And welcome back to Australia.
Yes, I've been here a few times.
You have been here a few times. We are a growing nation of champagne drinkers, champagne lovers. We are so far from France, but we do really have an appreciation of champagne, and there definitely is a thirst for more knowledge and a thirst for more styles of champagne in Australia. What is your perspective when you travel the world and you come to our nation and you meet with our restaurants and our consumers?
Australia is a very specific and very unique market because it's not, I mean, it's a huge country, not so many inhabitants compared to let's say France or Italy that are major champagne markets, but you're in the top 10 markets, and given the number of people living here, it means that you guys drink a lot of bottles per person. And not only the consumption is pretty high, but Australians tend to drink the good stuff, vintage champagne, prestige cuvée. So you really know what you really know the good champagne, and that's quite remarkable. Which is why I think that a lot of people from Champagne come to visit Australia. Besides the great view, besides the weather, which is amazing. So we love it here.
Good, I'm pleased. And tell me about you. How long have you been in the position of Chief Chef de Caves at the House of Ruinart?
I joined Ruinart in May 2007, so it's nearly 8 years.
Now the Maison of Ruinart, so it's the first founded champagne house.
Correct.
1729?
September 1st, 1729.
Okay,
yes.
So this is after the edict of Louis XV.
Yes.
And prior to that point in time, it was illegal or against the law to move champagne
It was
around?
illegal to bottle it, and it was illegal to export champagne out of the region outside of barrels. You know, I mean, the reason why champagne was not consumed, the wines of Champagne were not consumed locally, but mostly in Paris. And you could actually move them easily through the River Marne, and then going to the Seine, and then going to Paris. And every time you moved goods from one region to another, you had to pay taxes.
Right.
So you can't escape taxes when you move wines in barrel because it takes more space.
Okay.
Instead of smuggling bottles. But
right.
I always say, when French people are told to do something or not to do something, they try to do it anyway. So there was already champagne being produced in small quantities, likely, and you could not do a legal business from it. So we had to wait for that special allowance from the King Louis XV to do the bottling and then have champagne as a business.
So the oldest trading house, that's amazing. Now the relationship between Dom Ruinart, so Dom Ruinart is the name of also the name of your prestige cuvée. What was the relationship of Dom Ruinart with Nicolas Ruinart?
Dom Ruinart was the uncle of Nicolas,
okay.
And he was well connected. He was a Don Dominus, mastering philosophy, theology, well introduced to the rich and powerful people of France, including the king, and he saw that there was already an interest in champagne as a sparkling wine. And so he's likely the one who told the family that business of champagne might be a very smart thing to do. And sure enough, when the Ruinart family inherited vineyards and decided to go into the champagne business, they probably got the idea from Don Thierry Ruinart.
And this incredible sparkling wine that was taking the area by storm. And is it just a nice story, or is it true that Dom Pérignon and Dom Ruinart were friends in some way?
I don't know if they were friends. They knew each other. Don Ruinart, on a trip back from the south of France, I think, became sick. And before reaching Reims, he stopped by the Abbey of Auvillers. Eventually got sick there and died there a few months later.
Right.
So friends, they knew each other at some stage. Friends, maybe not. What is true is that they are buried in the same Abbey of Auvillers, and that's quite a lovely story.
Amazing. Of what you know from the wines from the early 1700s, so the first shipment of champagne being around 1730, how do you think that the wine has changed, evolved to modern day?
I think it's changed immensely. I mean, the grapes were not necessarily the same. Chardonnay was unknown, for instance. Everything was barrel fermented. We know the wines were quite sweet. They were not sparkling as much as today. You know, they had a little mousse. I mean, it was difficult to have that beautiful clear wine with a lot of foam.
And I imagine that the sparkle would have been a little ad hoc as well, not as consistent as what it was today.
No, absolutely not. And they actually, we see in the books and in the archives that some years were better than others, and they would sell the top champagne with clearer appearance and better foam, better effervescence at a higher price. So it has changed a lot. The wines were sweeter, now they're all quite dry to very, very dry.
And is that a continuing trend for you at the Maison too? Has the dosage come down over the past
A
couple
little
of years?
bit. When I joined Ruinart about 8 years ago, the dosage was in the 12 range, 11, 12 grams. Now we're about 8, 9. But I don't wish to go below that because I think dosage is still an important element of the whole balance. And the number for me is not important. What matters is the how the dosage is integrated, how the wine is clean on the finish, and I do believe that some dosage is needed to make champagne that are maybe more flexible to go with food or with an aperitif. So you need some of that.
And what is the style of the house now? What would you describe the style of the house to be?
Well, the style is very much influenced by the Chardonnay variety, really influenced by the Chardonnay. So Chardonnay, as you know, tends to give wine that are fresher, that are more elegant, more refined. And what we like to capture in the Chardonnay is what I like to call the aromatic freshness. So it's really a combination of fresh flavors of the Chardonnay, you know, the citrusy, fresh orchard fruit, flowers, green spices, with a beautiful and clean palate, yet combining a soft mousse, a fleshy impression on the palate, and that is really what we like to make in the non-vintage. The vintage Ruinart is a bit more austere, but needs more time to develop, and it's being made from Grand Cru Chardonnay. Really takes more time to to come up to what it is, and it tastes more like a great white Burgundy with bubbles than champagne in a way.
Yes. And you talk about Dom Ruinart. I try not to answer this question, but when people ask me, what is my favorite champagne? But I have to say, I love these wines. I have a real soft spot for Dom Ruinart wines, and I have been celebrating over the past couple of years special milestones with these particular champagnes.
Fantastic.
But the question I have for you is a personal question. Now, I find using the word complexity to describe these wines too simplistic to for what the wines are offering, and I'd really love to know, for my own interest, how you describe the Dom Ruinart wines.
Well, I really like to make a comparison with white Burgundies because I think they have a lot in common. They made 100% Chardonnay, top vineyards, top Grand Cru vineyards, on limestoney, chalky soil, which is maybe a bit different. But they tend to develop that toasty, the nice toastiness, that's the real toastiness. And that is also due because we tend to make our wines in a gently reductive way. And it gives that, that gentle, burnt match, also mineral, but like really whetstone kind of flavors, like oyster shell kind of flavors. And when they develop, they get a great aromatic complexity, taking more like dried fruits, hazelnut, pistachio kind of flavors. And they're beautiful to drink. So I don't know. I mean, I think complex describes them very, very well. But on top of it, you have that mouthfeel with the freshness. They're beautiful wines. They're not only champagnes. I always say that they're much more than champagnes. They're really great.
Very Venice.
White wines made of Chardonnay with bubbles, and that takes them to another step.
I agree. I love it. But for the Champagne members this month, the focus is Ruinart Rosé. So we're going to open up the bottle of rosé. We're going to talk a little bit about this rosé. Firstly, how do you make the rosé? What is your method for the production of the rosé for the House of Ruinart?
We've been making it with the traditional technique in Champagne, which is by blending. As you know, blending was a technique of choice from early on, and we want the rosé to be quite intense in color, intense in flavors, but as approachable, as gentle on the palate as our white wine. So we don't want the tannins. We want the color of the Pinot Noir, and as such, and also we use a lot of Chardonnay for the freshness.
So of course the Maison doesn't use the Sanier method because it takes away the calling card of the Chardonnay, which is really what you hang your hat on, the elegance and the freshness of the Maison.
True, you can't macerate Chardonnay to make rosé. So obviously you have to add some red wine, and that's also the way rosé champagne has been made for such a long time. Initially, Ruinart was the first house credited to ever make rosé champagne back in 1764. Yeah, we found
phenomenal.
We found archive documents very recently, about a year and a half ago. These ladies were looking through the old archives, and in the month of March 1764, in a shipment of 120 bottles going to the northern part of Germany, the Mecklenburg area. There was 60 bottles of champagne called Œil de Perdrix, partridge eye.
Yes.
And we looked in other documents, and it proved that this champagne was made with a stronger color, intentionally. So it was not an accident, not coincidentally. They were really making champagne, probably macerating it. We don't know, but at the time, I guess this was the way it was made.
Of course.
And then later on, the technique of blending was invented by Madame Clicquot, actually. And that became the technique of choice for most of the rosé champagnes. Now today, as you mentioned, a small proportion of the rosé in Champagne are made by maceration, which is a word I prefer to saigner, but the vast majority is made by red wine. And it's a question of style, of choice. I mean, there's no quality difference between, you can do anything, even more intense or less intense. We like to make our rosé quite friendly to drink, with a beautiful color, intense color, lots of fruit, but very little tannins. And in order to do so, we do believe that making a red wine with the perfect extraction in terms of flavor and color allows us to get the rosé the way we want it, which is very fresh, fruit-driven, but with a beautiful and clean palate, and with very, very few tannins. There's just a hint of structure, but the flavors are more important.
So what are you looking for when you're producing the red wine that is blended in the assemblage?
We are looking of making red wine that goes with the rosé. We're not making red wine that you would drink on its own, and it's actually, when you taste it by itself, it tastes more like a Beaujolais Gamay than a Pinot Noir. Think of a very light Pinot Noir,
right.
with a beautiful fruit, very intense fruit, very, very clean, very fresh. And a delicate palate. That's what you don't want to make a red wine that tastes like a red wine, because otherwise that would mean tannins, and we don't want those.
And where are the red grapes and the red wine coming from?
We source mostly Premier Cru vineyards, which would be either coming from the northern part of La Montagne de Reims, northern eastern part, so like places like Rilly, Chigny, Lude, a bit of Bezanne as well, and from the Marne Valley, like Cumières is a good spot for those grapes. Sorry, I'm just going to taste it.
So what is the percentage of red wine that's in the composition?
It's nearly 20%. Altogether,
very generous.
this is 55% Pinot Noir, and 20% would be the red wine, and 45% Chardonnay. So yes, it is quite high in Pinot Noir, but you have to realize that since the red wine is very light, you need to have quite a high percentage to get that color.
Right, of course. That's superb.
A lot of fruit. It's not a big rosé. We really, again, that's the style of the house. We are focusing on the aromatic freshness, and this is no exception.
And how long, technical details of the wine for our club members, how long has it been aging on its lees, approximately?
Approximately 2.5 years on the lees. So between the harvest and the release, it's about 3 years.
And do you have a similar dosage to the Brut? Or
The exact same dosage. The dosage is just above 8 grams of sugar per liter.
No problem. About the 20% in red wine?
Yes. And the flavors, they're quite, they're very much like tropical fruit. I find quite often a bit of guava, lychee, more so than the traditional strawberry, raspberry. Cherry is often in this wine as well.
Yes.
But I like those, those tropical flavors.
Wonderful. And that's coming from the Chardonnay aspect?
I don't know. I wish I knew where they come from, but to be honest with you, I can't explain it.
Does it
The
vary?
pink grapefruit, yes, I think that's the Chardonnay.
Yes.
But those tropical notes, I don't know. Probably the way we make the red wine, I think.
Of course, but it's such a phenomenal achievement to achieve that consistency in aromatic profile year upon year. I mean, are you successful, or some years are you just surprised at what's coming out of the glass?
That's a good question, but I think the way we make the red wine is consistent. We always use the similar grapes. I mean, year in, year out, it's the same source of supply for the grapes. So in a way, it's not too surprising that it's consistent from one year to another. We also use reserve wines for this wine, a bit of red reserve wines.
You use some red reserve wines?
Yes,
right.
that usually 1 year old.
To
again, to get the
complexity or
consistency in
consistency?
color. Yes, absolutely. Right. It's quite important. So yeah, I think it's I'm not surprised by the way it comes out. That's the way we expect it.
It's superb. It's superb. Now, I have to ask you, I personally think that rosé champagne is one of the most gastronomic of all wines.
I agree.
Outside of the category of champagne included. Can you give us a recommendation for pairing that that would be just superb with this wine?
I totally agree with you. I think that rosé champagne can do, the whole menu. You can start with it as an aperitif, and serve some light canapes of, let's say, like a tuna tartare. I think it goes so well with it, and then or even like duck as a rillette of duck.
Yes, superb.
Then you can move to like I like the color to be matched as well. So salmon is great, like a sashimi of salmon, or even better if you do low salmon cooked at a low temperature, like 55 degrees Celsius. It's so fleshy and beautiful with the rosé. You can keep on with duck, and I love picking style duck with rosé. I think it's so fantastic.
Me too.
Both ways. The crispy galette and then the what do you call it? The pot. It goes. It's just amazing.
Wonderful.
Some cheese would go with it, like creamy cheese. Think of a Brouillard Savarin or Chaours. I would go with the rosé, and then of course dessert. If you use berries, tropical fruits, would do wonderful. So it's really the champagne you can have, from start to the finish.
Absolutely. And while we're talking about the meal, I have one final question for you. I know that you, like I, have an incredible opportunity to drink champagne on a regular basis and dine with
Every day.
every day.
How
Great,
lucky I
good
am.
perk to your job. But also amazing food experiences, because there's no point in drinking champagne on its own. I mean, you must explore it with cuisine. And I know that I eat in some amazing restaurants, I've had some amazing experiences, but I really want to know, when was the last time that you had a meal, a champagne, an experience, I don't know whether it's in New York, Japan, in France, at home, that just made you stop and go, wow, that was an amazing
It's very easy to
experience.
answer because it was yesterday evening.
Are you kidding?
We had dinner at a place called Sake restaurant.
Yes.
So I love Japan. I really love the culture. I love the food. And I also think the food goes so well with champagne because it's clear, bright,
Delicate.
refined, delicate, and that's the kind of flavor you want to associate champagne with. So we had this dinner, although the chef was not Japanese, he's a local chef, but he worked with Japanese ingredients, but maybe not completely Japanese, so he was maybe more inventive.
Influenced.
And so the whole meal was fantastic. We had, with this wine, we had what do you call, like toro belly of the pork, or like the fatty part,
Yes.
with a bit of preserve from a kind of orange or mandarin called Mika in Japan, that add a touch of sweetness, and then the sauce was a beautiful reduction, no fat at all. An amazing match. But the best match was actually with Don Ruinart 2004, Hokkaido scallops, jumbo size, just carpaccio style, with a bit of a dashi gel, a bit of yuzu, a bit of herbs, and it was clean, fresh, bright, and the wine was just magical on it. And everybody on the table agreed that this was, it's like wow, a wow match.
Wow, amazing.
So,
Well
I can
done,
come to Australia and have great meals.
That's good. Well, Frederic, thank you for coming back to Australia. We really
pleasure.
appreciate that the chef de caves make the long journey, and I know it's a long journey out to Australia. We are a nation of champagne lovers. We do love the House of Ruinart. It really is the jewel in the Louis Vuitton Moët Hennessy crown, if I can say so. The rosé is absolutely stunning. I hope the members enjoy that for this month, and thank you for spending some time with me.
Santé.
Santé.
Cheers. Cheers.